Chapter 5, How is that called stealing? When Han Chuo woke up, he found himself lying on the small wooden bed in the warehouse, covered in ice-cold water. In front of him, little fatty Jack had a wooden pail in one hand and was climbing onto a stool with great effort. He intended to dump the ice-cold water right on top of Han Chuo. Han Chuo was already freezing his butt off as it was a bit chilly that day. He gave a great yell as he saw Jack about to tip the pail over. "Jack, what are you doing?" Little fatty Jack was stepping onto a stool that had been trashed. It wasn't the sturdiest to begin with, and his legs wobbled in surprise when he heard Han Chuo's yell. His hand jerked, and all the contents of the pail came crashing down on Han Chuo's head as the pail flew and smashed into Han Chuo's chest. "Ugh! I say, Jack, are you trying to kill me?" Han Chuo started shuddering uncontrollably after the second pail of ice-cold water. Not only that, but it hurt like hell when the pail itself hit him. He immediately started cursing loudly. "Sorry, Brian, I thought the first pail wasn't enough to wake you up. This stool of yours was wobbly to begin with, and I was surprised when you yelled. That's why my hand slipped and I dumped the water all over you." Little fatty Jack was extremely apologetic and started wiping off Han Chuo's neck with a random rag that he had found on the ground. Who knew that it would provoke a scream from Han Chuo like a pig being slaughtered? He hastily scrambled away and said, Jack, that rag in your hand is covered in bone dust that metamorphosed during necromancy experiments. It feels like little needles are prickling me. Are you trying to stab me to death?" "Ah. Sorry, Brian, I didn't mean to, I really didn't mean to." Jack was dismayed as he quickly threw the rag far, far away. He was thankful that there was no bone dust on the side that he had been holding. Achoo. Achoo. Aw, forget it. Jack, why am I here? Didn't I get hit by Lisa's agony of the soul because that dickhead Bok used me as a scapegoat? His neck breaking out in red patches, Han Chuo kept sneezing as he rushed to peel off his sopping wet clothes. He quickly groped for the black towel that Brian used and dried himself off. "Brian, you have so many scars over your body." Han Chuo took a good look at his new body, for the first time, upon hearing Jack's words. There wasn't a single inch of unmarked skin on his body as far as his eyes could see. He heaved an inward sigh and once again felt pity for Brian's circumstances. "Scars are a man's memories and medals of honor. What the hell do you know about them? Hurry and tell me, what happened after I fainted?" "Classes happened to start after you passed out from the agony of the soul." Lisa said a few words and ran off to class. "I yelled for Uncle Saru and the two of us carried you back." "So Uncle Saru had been by?" "Oh yes, what did Lisa say before she left?" Han Chuo nodded as he continued to wipe himself off. Uncle Saru was the necromancy major's oldest errand runner. He was 50-some years old and quite kind to Brian and Jack. When Brian had arrived at the academy, Saru had already been an errand runner for more than 10 years. "Lisa said it was too bad for you. If the agony of the soul had landed on Bok, he would have been fine after suffering for 3 days since he's a magic apprentice. But you're not a necromancy student and have no mental strength at all. You'll probably suffer for a month. She said you bothered her when she was sleeping last night, and hurt her foot because you put rocks in your pants, so she won't dismiss the agony of the soul. Damn it, how dare Lisa treat me this way? I'll take care of her one day." Han Chuo's face darkened as he listened to Jack's words and started cussing. His actions startled Jack as the latter thought, "This isn't the first time Lisa's been this way to you. I've never seen you do anything to get back at her." When Han Chuo was done venting his spleen, he thought briefly, "Bok has mental strength because he's a magic apprentice. He only has to suffer for 3 days, and I have to endure this for a month? Hey, my potential is great. If I learn some necromancy, maybe I can get better in 3 days." "Brian, you're an errand slave, how could you learn magic?" "Then how do the students learn magic?" "They first have to meditate and learn to sense the magical elements. When they've cultivated their mental strength, then they need to study the knowledge contained within the books of magic and practice the magic incantations. They ask the teacher if they have any questions." Jack said matter-of-factly, after he thought for a short while. "There we go, I can meditate. When I've cultivated mental strength, can't I look within the books of magic to learn the incantations written there?" "But you don't have a book of magic?" At this point in the conversation, Han Chuo had sidled around to Jack and suddenly threw a friendly arm around him, smiling winningly at him. "But I have you, don't you clean the library?" Jack was shocked and promptly created some space between the two of them. He said with a panicked expression, "Brian, you want me to steal books for you? How vulgar. How can that be stealing? I'm just asking you to borrow some books for me. You can put them back when I'm done with them." No one reads those foundational books anyways, who would know? Jack, I'm in dire straits today because I was trying to help you. Now shouldn't you help me too? Hanch-Wo said earnestly to little fatty Jack. Jack wavered upon hearing Hanch-Wo's words, but finally agreed to borrow magic books for Hanch-Wo after Hanch-Wo gave him a puppy-eyed look. Later that night, Jack stealthily crept up to Hanch-Wo and took out copies of the Foundations of Necromancy and a magical dictionary to hand over to Hanch-Wo. He exhorted Hanch-Wo to be careful and cautious at all costs before finally surreptitiously sneaking away. As an errand slave, Brian had no right to learn how to read. However, as an errand slave, who had to do anything and everything in the course of his job, he had picked up quite a few words over the past 6 years. All of this knowledge had been left to Hanch-Wo, and he was able to read the words in the 2 books. Hanch-Wo shut the warehouse door after Jack had left, flipped to the first yellowed page of the Foundations of Magic, and started reading with every bit of interest. Magic was a method of communicating with the magical elements of the world by using mental strength. There were 4 ways to use magic: through incantations, magic scrolls, or objects, hand seals, and magic matrices. Necromancy had once been an extremely prosperous branch of magic. At the height of its popularity, all dark magic had been categorized under necromancy. It was a pity that after its fall from grace, necromancy had become a subcategory of dark magic instead. Necromancy was a field of magic that had started by simply controlling souls and skeletons. As it progressed and forebearers continuously experimented, its repertoire of spells had continuously grown. It slowly formed into a school of thought and became the representative of dark magic. Mental strength was the foundation of all magic. The only way to cultivate mental strength was to sense the magical elements, through meditation, that regular people could not perceive. One was only considered a magic apprentice if they cultivated mental strength through meditation. Thus, the first thing Hanch-Wo did after studying the Foundations of Necromancy was to meditate and try to get a grasp on mental strength. However, he came up empty-handed after meditating for 7 days. There wasn't a trace of mental strength to be found. Hanch-Wo could only meditate at night during those 7 days. He had to be the diligent and bumbling Brian during the day. He had to continue to perform an errand boy's daily chores of cleaning, sanitizing, bug killing, and trash dumping, otherwise he would have no place at the academy. Thanks to the agony of the soul, Hanch-Wo's brain would suddenly spasm with pain a few times every day. He fainted dead away the first 2 times, but possibly acclimated after that and managed to stay on his feet. Hanch-Wo's half-mad, half-village idiot reputation also spread during this time. However, although he looked like a blundering madman, he still finished his assigned duties every day. Thus, Babylon Academy did not kick him out upon seeing that his work was still completed. As for what the necromancy students thought about Hanch-Wo's crazy eccentricities, they were of one mind. Hanch-Wo had formed a habit of running errands after working for 6 years. Although he was a bit crazy, some habits were difficult to break and thus he still finished his duties every day. Except for one thing. Hanch-Wo would always somehow have a headache whenever the students approached him for experiments these days. He became even more out of control when his head hurt, and sometimes completely wrecked the lab. There was nothing the students could do as they knew that he had been hit by Lisa's agony of the soul, and had gone a bit mental. Even now, no one knew why Lisa had given Bach such a beating, but Bach was depressed nonetheless. He often thrashed Hanch-Wo on the basis of a flimsy excuse. Bach was a magic apprentice and stronger than Hanch-Wo, so the latter always ended up in much worse shape, even when he pretended to be crazy and hit back. Hanch-Wo would break out into loud curses every night when he returned to the warehouse. "Bach, you scum, just you wait. One day I'll beat you so bad that even your mom and dad won't recognize you." He'd been thrashed by Bach again today, and the latter had a small skeleton as backup. Hanch-Wo was naturally not a match for the two, and even now was covered in black and blue bruises. The difference was, Hanch-Wo felt that his strength was growing stronger these days, along with his appetite. Whenever he was still hungry after his rations, he would ask Jack for some more food. Although it hurt like no other every time Bach beat him up, Hanch-Wo would train according to the principles of the solid realm when he returned to the warehouse. All his aches and pains would disappear during the night, and he would be in fine spirits the morning after. The next time he got into a fight with Bach, he noticed that Bach's hits hurt less and less. Hanch-Wo would immediately return to the warehouse after each beating and started training. That little bit of magical yuan within his body unknowingly grew bigger during this time as well. It seemed that his body was slowly reforging itself after each cycle of beating and training, and the magical yuan slowly changed from the size of a thumbnail to the mass of a thumb. This both excited and scared Han Shuo. He was excited that the magical yuan was growing stronger, and that his body and spirit were improving. He was scared that seemingly because of the magical yuan becoming stronger, he found it harder and harder to control his temper. Han Shuo would easily commit actions that he would later regret. He retrieved the foundations of necromancy from underneath the small, wooden bed and started meditating habitually after a short perusal of the book. He circulated the magical yuan randomly throughout his body. Places that had aches and pains were greatly relieved after the magical yuan had traveled past them. That sliver of magical yuan slowly traveled from his neck to his brain as Han Shuo was meditating. It was at this moment that a familiar pain started emanating from his brain. Han Shuo knew immediately that Lisa's agony of the soul was about to strike again. Suddenly, just as Han Shuo's brain was hurting, the magical yuan slipped into the center of the pain. This was the first time that the magical yuan had moved into his brain when the agony of the soul was also flaring up. Han Shuo felt as if a cannon had gone off inside his brain, and fainted again after another round of intense pain. Chapter 5, How is that called stealing? When Han Shuo woke up, he found